Good evening, everyone, and welcome excuse me, to the July 11th, 2022 Pine-Richland School District Combined Meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. DiTullio?
Here.
Mrs. Turchick? Here. Mr. Kashani?
Here.
Mrs. Brusalis?
Here.
Mr. Cassidy?
Here.
Mrs. Hillman?
Here.
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Dr. Mihalik? Dr. Meyer?
Here.
Thank you.
Just a quick announcement. The board met in executive session prior to the combined meeting for the purpose of interviewing the recommended candidates for the positions of high school assistant principal. Item 1.02, recognition of visitors. Ms. Williams.
Our first speaker tonight is Jeff Meyer.
Good evening. As a result of the recent Right to Know uncovering regarding the use of pronouns in recent board open discussions and my daughter's participation in GSA during her Pine-Richland tenure, my daughter has asked me to read the following to the board tonight. So this is her words, not mine. Hi, my name is Addison Meyer. I'm a 2022 graduate of Pine-Richland. I've asked my father to read this because I'm currently starting my college experience at Penn State this summer. I'm sharing my thoughts tonight about the recent comments about pronouns. As a Pine-Richland student, my overall experience was positive. Yet, while focusing on the topic at hand, I do see opportunities for the district to grow. Throughout my high school career, I never experienced a teacher asking for preferred pronouns, let alone educating us about the proper use of pronouns and names. As someone who is non-binary and uses multiple pronouns, it's humorous to me that some of the board leadership seems to be upset over a so-called disconnect over a policy that was implemented by the board not that long ago. Regardless of the connection between school administration and the board, I believe that a student has the right to let administrators know what pronouns and names they want to be used when referring to them, and the school should honor those shared pronouns without input from the board. Seeking out the input of the school board beforehand leaves open opportunities for a lot of binary trans and non-binary trans students to be outed in an environment in which they are not entirely comfortable. This could potentially harm the safety of Pine-Richland students. The term outed in this reference is in reference to coming out. Being outed is letting people know someone is queer when they may not be ready to tell people or want it to be known. The fact that multiple board members are more concerned about that formerly mentioned disconnect between faculty and the board about the education of preferred pronouns and names than the safety of students is baffling to me. Regardless of your beliefs, all Pine-Richland students need to feel safe, accepted, and supported at school. I know that we may not agree on everything, but I ask you to respect the students who are directly impacted by your comments. As board members, I encourage you to serve Pine-Richland students with open minds and open hearts, to educate yourself about people who differ from you and make Pine-Richland a great place for all. Thank you for your time. Addison Meyer. I'm just going to add a couple comments since I have a little bit of time left. But as you can imagine, I'm extremely proud of my daughter for writing that. It really takes a strong individual to speak up like that. As she indicated in her comments, she just started at Penn State in the summer session. With that in mind, I wanted to tell you just a really quick story. A couple of weeks ago, Carla, who's on the board with you, and I had the opportunity and privilege to move her into her dorm room. The very first person that we encountered when we walked into the dorm room was her RA, who was non-binary. Okay? So I ask you, how would you like your children to have handled that scenario? I would hope that you would want your children to have learned how to handle themselves in that scenario. And if you find yourself being the parent of someone who's non-binary, I'm guessing you probably feel a little bit differently about the use of pronouns. I'm still learning myself. I'm not perfect.
If
I make
you could
mistakes.
please finish up your comments.
And I'm trying to learn, and she knows that. But I would encourage all of you to take a long look in the mirror and ask yourselves which side of the fight you want to be on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Chris Bonneau.
Good evening. By now you have read the article in the Pine-Richland School District published by the Pittsburgh Institute for Nonprofit Journalism. In that article, parents, students, and some board members spoke out about their frustrations with how the board, particularly the 6 members who voted against Policy 832, have ignored members of the community who are advocating for the fair, just, and equitable treatment of all. Of the 6, only Mrs. Turchick went on the record explaining her position, so I want to thank her for that. Her colleagues were too cowardly to do so, much as many of the same people did not engage in the substantive discussion of 832 when it was before the board. Even though I've been actively following this discussion since its inception, I learned a few things from the article about why people voted the way they did that weren't disclosed during the meetings. Honestly, I did have no hope that Mr. Cassidy would support the policy, since he has posted memes on his Facebook page of Governor Wolf and former Health Secretary Levine dressed in Nazi outfits. He also has liked a meme posted by a community member that said, "Mexican word of the day, mandates. Tom Wolf and Rachel Levine go on mandates together." Real classy stuff. And despite her relative silence on the issue, the fact that Mrs. Hillman has donated hundreds of dollars to Donald Trump's Save America PAC after the January 6th insurrection, I know it's hilarious, Lisa, was not a good omen to her supporting fairness and equity. Same for Mrs. Brusalis and her family's many thousands of dollars in contributions to Sean Parnell and his PAC. Parnell has said, quote, "I feel like the whole happy wife, happy life nonsense has done nothing but raise one generation of women tyrants after the next," and referred to Black Lives Matter protesters as, quote, "enemies of America." Giving money to that guy is a pretty good sign you don't care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But Mr. Kashani's vote was puzzling to me, especially since he said he supported the policy at the previous meeting. In the article, I learned that Mr. Kashani believed we needed biblical justice, not social justice. While Mr. Kashani's blog post does not define biblical justice, he does say that if the law of God says this and you do that, then it is unjust. And he goes on to say that social justice poses a threat to Republican self-government by corroding patriotic ties and demanding special treatment rather than equality under the law. This type of Christian nationalist thinking has no place in public schools, and it explains why Mr. Kashani opposes Policy 832, a policy built around education and training, and prefers to rely on Policy 103, which deals with discipline. What do I mean by this? Here are some examples of biblical justice. I could give you Leviticus, but that's too easy. How about Luke, if you're a New Testament guy? The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. I can also give you some Revelation, but I'm running out of time. During the campaign, members of the PR Kids First slate, Hillman, Cassidy, Brusalis, and Turchick, pledged, among other things, to be, quote, the adults in the room. The way Policy 832 has been handled and the actions of board members during this discussion shows that this is just another empty promise that was made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Rebecca Hoffman.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Hoffman, and I live on McLeod Drive. I can now officially say I have 5 kids in the district. After seeing a recent email stating board leadership's disagreement with training staff and teachers about the proper use of pronouns, quote, number 3, committing to educating about the proper use of pronouns without any board input is overreaching, unquote. I spent some time reviewing the legal documents from the 2016 bathroom lawsuit and going through the minutes of board meetings from that time. My oldest child was still at Eden Hall then, so I had general familiarity with what occurred, but not the details. I learned a lot over the last couple of weeks. I learned who, among the current board, voted for that resolution that was ultimately ruled to be illegal. Only Mr. DiTullio. But both Mr. DiTullio and Mr. Kashani are very familiar with the terms of the resulting settlement. And they are 2 of the 3 members of the leadership team that sent the above email to district administrators. From a news article dated 7/26/17, as part of the agreement, the Pine-Richland School District agreed to rescind the September policy. It also agreed to update its non-discrimination policy to include protections based on sexual orientation. From another dated 8/2/17, the district must also adopt policies that respect transgender students' gender identity with respect to student records, names, pronouns, and restrooms, among other aspects, Lambda said in the statement announcing the settlement. I confirmed that this is addressed in board-approved Policy 103B. Everyone here will recall how we were told that Policy 832 was unnecessary because we can lean on the guidance of existing Policy 103. Item G, names and pronouns. Every student has the right to be addressed by a name and pronoun that corresponds to the student's gender identity. A court-ordered name or gender change is not required, and the student need not change his or her official records. The building principal or a staff member designee should privately ask transgender or gender-expansive students at the beginning of the school year how they want to be addressed in class, in correspondence to home, or at conferences with the parents or guardians. In compliance with FERPA, the building principal will ensure that the preferred name and pronouns are communicated to all staff members with legitimate educational interest. Item M, training and professional development. The superintendent shall ensure that the lead school psychologist and director of human resources and legal affairs provide training for all student support team members on their responsibilities under applicable laws and Board Policy 103, non-discrimination in school and classroom practices, and this administrative regulation. In addition, the lead school psychologist and director of human resources and legal affairs will also ensure that training is held with relevant teachers, administrators, counselors, social workers, security, and health and physical education staff to provide a supportive learning environment. The district shall implement ongoing professional development to build the skills of all staff members to prevent, identify, and respond to bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Policy
Ms. Hoffman, if you
103B
could finish up your comments, please. Thank
was
you.
reviewed and unanimously approved on third read January 11th, 2021, last year. Which leads me to ponder what the heck's going on. Why are we going backward? Why are these board members pretending that they don't know what their own policy says? But more importantly, what is the goal of making school less safe and supportive for vulnerable students?
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Judy Masucci.
My name is Judy Masucci. My pronouns are she, her. Up until a short time ago, I appreciated people sharing their pronouns, but didn't realize just how important it was. I always thought, it's obvious what my pronouns are, so why do I need to share them? But then a person I am close to made a comment that really struck me. They pointed out how half of the people in a Zoom meeting had their pronouns listed. And they mentioned that it was important for them because they knew that these people were allies. This person who said this to me is not transgender, and they do not have pronouns that differ from their outward-facing characteristics. Yet, the sharing of pronouns was very important to this person as a member of the LGBTQ+ community. For me, a light bulb went off when this was said to me. It never dawned on me that sharing my pronouns could have a large impact on someone else. It never dawned on me that doing so would make someone feel safe when they are near me. My pronouns match my outward-facing characteristics, so it never dawned on me that I needed to state what they were. I have since changed my signature on my email so that it includes my pronouns. I want people who feel nervous or unsafe to know that with me, they are safe. I'm an ally. That is why it's important to teach about pronouns in school. Why it's important to respect the pronouns of our students and to make sure that students and teachers know how to use them. This is why it's important to call people by the pronouns that make them feel safe and whole, even if they differ from what you think they should be, even if they feel awkward coming out of your mouth. When you know better, you do better. Let's do better for our students at Pine-Richland.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Jill Baxter.
Good evening. I'm Jill Baxter of Prosper Now, a 26-year Pine resident. This year's stakeholder survey is on the agenda tonight. Student satisfaction in the school environment should alarm you, as you sit here insisting that educational equity is a concept you cannot embrace. Students are listening. 1 in 4 believe the people in Pine-Richland do not respect the differences of others, down 10 percentage points in 1 year. Down 13 percentage points is the number who believe students treat other students with respect. I'm struck by how little we have learned in the last 5 years. At that time, the Pine-Richland School District was embroiled in a very public, very emotional lawsuit regarding the treatment of transgender students in our schools. If you didn't live here then, you may be unfamiliar with the history behind our district's non-discrimination policy. I'm here to tell you where the policy came from, why it's essential, and why you are not at liberty to change it, even if some aspects of it make you uncomfortable. Last month, a board member read an excerpt from an email he received from the board president claiming that, quote, committing to educating about the proper use of pronouns without board input is overreaching, end quote. The words alone show an astonishing lack of concern for the well-being of transgender or gender nonconforming students, but also either ignorance of a policy established during his tenure or an unwillingness to abide by that policy. Briefly, a lawsuit brought by a group of Pine-Richland transgender students in 2017 ended with a legally binding settlement, a settlement which included, among other things, the requirement to include gender identity in Pine-Richland's non-discrimination policies and practices. In the settlement, PR agreed to adopt policies that respect transgender students' gender identity with respect to student records, names, pronouns, restrooms, and more. The current policy, AR 103B, therefore clearly states that if a student, parent, or guardian specifies a change in name or pronoun, the school will consistently and cooperatively use that name and pronoun to protect the emotional and physical health of that student. The same policy specifies training and professional development to build the skills of all staff members to protect these students, and staff who are in regular contact with transgender students are mandated to receive even more thorough training to provide a supportive learning environment. In short, this is not up for debate. If you were here and paying even a little attention 5 years ago, you learned from those students how being forced into certain bathrooms caused them severe emotional and physical distress. You learned how insensitive comments at school board meetings caused hostility in school and interfered with the students' ability to receive their right to a fair and free education. Mr. Board President, it is not overreaching to commit to train school staff on the appropriate use of pronouns. The suggestion that school board input is needed, more school board input is needed, is downright absurd. The board and the courts already gave their input. There is nothing left to debate.
If you could wrap up your comments.
It is common sense, it is your own policy, and it is the law.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tom Baxter.
Tom Baxter of Prosper Now. Like Jill, I'm distressed by the stakeholder survey results to be presented later, showing an alarmingly steep declines in students' perceptions that students respect each other and their differences, and of students being treated fairly, and of being prepared for life after graduation. So when those come up, take a look at those numbers. The unhealthy culture revealed in these data is a direct result of the leaders of this board setting a poor example of not caring about discrimination and harassment of people of color, female and LGBTQ students. We've seen board officers ignore sexual harassment and violence against female students, make public statements about their disdain for the DEI effort, and as many people just told us, how the board president recommended action that would contribute to the harassment of transgender and non-gender conforming students. I really want to know what motivates an adult in a leadership position in a school district to seek to leverage power to harm children. What a petty, disgraceful, and cowardly example this sets for the students in this district. LGBTQ youth are an extremely vulnerable population. According to a national survey of 16,000 students, 60% of LGBTQ students report feeling unsafe at school. 86% have experienced harassment or assault at school based on their characteristics. Nearly half of LGBTQ teens, nearly half, report having seriously considered suicide in the last 12 months, and 30% of them have attempted suicide. That's 3 times the rate of other teens, and LGBTQ teens are 5 times more likely to have used hard drugs. Now be aware, in the US, 1 in 6 US teens report being LGBTQ or curious, 1 in 6. So if we assume that every Pine-Richland household has 2 children, that means that 1 in 3 Pine-Richland households of teens have a kid who's LGBTQ or unsure. Now, you're probably scoffing at that. There's probably 12 of you up there. That's 4 of you, okay? And you're saying, oh, it's not me. Well, you know why? Because they're not coming out because they're terrified of you, okay? So if you're not accepting of LGBTQ youth and you're encouraging their discrimination and harassment, you are personally contributing to driving teens towards drugs and suicide. And there's a high likelihood this may be one of your own kids or their close friends. Like every other teen, LGBTQ youth are navigating the difficult path to adulthood, and they just want to be accepted for who they are. They need acceptance and respect from everyone in the district. The leaders here need to set that example for students to model.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ms. Williams.
Next speaker is Alyssa Reinau.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Elissa, she, her. I am a transgender alumni of PR from 2017. Back in 2016, my right to use the bathroom had been revoked with, back in 2016, my right to use the bathroom that coincided with my gender identity was torn away from me and later returned. I am here today to aid the students that I wanted to help 5 years ago so that they don't have to go through the emotional and physical trauma that I and my peers faced. It has come to my attention via PR community members that education about pronoun usage is being seen as optional. This wasn't an issue when I learned this grammar lesson in 4th grade. Pronoun usage only became an issue due to lack of education and unwillingness to respect a group of humans people do not want to understand. The fact is, everybody has pronouns. A cisgender person, one who identifies with their sex assigned at birth, may not think about their pronouns because that part of their identity isn't being judged. This is a privilege. Stepping up and using your privilege to fight for others is important. For example, I may be trans, but I'm also white, so I don't have to think about my skin color when I walk into a room. However, educating myself and others like me about the barriers people of color go through is using my privilege. Staff can be taught to use their privilege, whatever it may be. Teaching pronouns is important, or using pronouns during roll call is educational and respectful. Especially now that pronoun usage is being used on social media, using them is also life-saving. According to a study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, a group of 129 trans and gender-diverse students were surveyed regarding the use of their chosen name, the name the person needs to be called, and pronoun usage. Russell and colleagues found that using a student's chosen name and pronouns decreased their suicidal behavior by 56%. We already have a lot of suicide attempts and completed suicides within this district, and we don't need any more. All students should receive the benefit of having the same education and enjoy their schooling journey without discrimination. Making pronoun education optional would be discriminatory and would break Policy 105, which discusses the curriculum. Guideline 7 states, the district's curriculum should provide an equal educational opportunity for all students. You'd be doing a disservice to students by not giving all the staff the same education. I would love
If you could please wrap up your comments.
Yep. I would love to meet with you folks during a separate time to discuss this matter further. If you're going to talk about rights, if you're going to talk about people's rights and livelihood, you need their input. If you don't have their input, then who are you really helping? Thank you.
Thank you. Next
Next
speaker.
speaker is Marcy Fisher.
Hi, this is Marcy Fisher, 529 Madison Drive, Gibsonia. I'm here, I see myself almost as a shield from and helping the people that are too afraid to come here and speak on, with their concerns. Just know that your actions affect the community members and the students, and they're fearful to even bring these issues to you, to the board majority, who aren't respecting their pronouns. I am the administrator of the Pine-Richland for Kindness group. I think it's 563 members at this point. It's been around a year now. My goal was to try to bring the community together. I just recently did a volunteer drive for the Sisters organization. It's a Black-led transgender place for people who are homeless and coming out of homelessness because of the discrimination toward them. I'm going to be the first to admit that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn. So in doing this drive, the Sisters group gave me some information so that I can learn about these issues too. Since I'm a white, cisgender, which means straight female, I didn't learn all these things either. And you can always start from where you are and learn something new. And that's sort of where I am. And so if you take away the judgment of yourself and you just start where you are and you make some progress, no one should hold that against you. There's always room for improvement. So I did this drive. I took an Instapot down there. Ian dropped it off. He's got autism. We're afraid he's going to, get hit on the street corner. But we did it twice because people gave me donations for these people so that they can have hygiene items. So I asked them today, hey, what can I say? So they said, Dear Pine-Richland School District, and Brittany will continue the letter that they sent to me today. Dear Pine-Richland School District, we at Sisters Pittsburgh would like to first acknowledge and thank those within the Pine-Richland for Kindness Facebook group who've contributed in any way to the donations we've received over the past month or so. The items that you also graciously sent our way have been to provide a more comfortable living space for transgender and non-binary individuals currently residing in our transitional housing shelter located in Allegheny County. We've also kept some of the items at our community center as a better way to provide fun and safe environment for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals that come to visit us. We at Sisters Pittsburgh would also like to express our appreciation and solidarity for the students, parents, alumni, and faculty of the Pine-Richland School District that are working tirelessly to make their community a safer place for people of color, LGBTQIA individuals, and people with physical and mental disabilities. Thank you all for understanding the irrefutable fact that a community in which
If you could
everyone
wrap up
feels
your
welcome
comments.
and respected. Okay.
Brittany Kindersmith is our next speaker.
Hi, friends. Okay, so just to be clear, I'm just going to continue reading this statement from Sisters Pittsburgh, where Marcy left off. Thank you all for understanding the irrefutable fact that a community in which everyone feels welcome and respected regardless of their race, disability, gender, or sexual orientation is a community that thrives. As a Black-led, trans-led nonprofit, Sisters Pittsburgh believes that it is important to educate both our communities and the public on issues that affect marginalized communities. With this in mind, we appreciate the community members of Pine-Richland, including the Pine-Richland School Board, for allowing us to give a statement about pronouns during today's board meeting. Gender pronouns are used to describe a person's gender. For example, she, her, he, him, they, them, ze, zir, etc. Pronouns can be interchangeable as well. Someone who uses she, her pronouns might also accept being referred to with they, them pronouns. Purposefully misusing someone's pronouns or putting in little to no effort to remember them leaves the person feeling disrespected and unwelcome. This, like most social issues, is of even more importance when it involves children. It is important to note that LGBTQ youth are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather placed at higher risk because of how they are mistreated and stigmatized in society. Research done by the Trevor Project states that Many LGBTQ youth lack access to affirming spaces, with only 55% of youth reporting that their school is LGBTQ affirming and only 37% saying that their home is LGBTQ affirming. And just a side thought, wouldn't it be really sad if those end up being some of your guys' kids that are being raised in a home where they don't feel like they're being affirmed? Like, just a real bummer. Greg, I don't know. LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. LGBTQ young people report lower rates of attempting suicide, though, when they have access to LGBTQ affirming spaces. If you ask any member of the LGBTQIA community, most will tell you that they in some way, shape, or form realized their sexuality or gender at a very young age. We send our kids to school to learn and grow in the hopes that after 12 or so years of formal education, they will go on to impact the world in some positive way. And we expect this of them despite the bullying, lack of proper funding, and threat of school shootings that some of our students are facing on a daily basis. We at Sisters Pittsburgh believe, at minimum, when students come to school every day ready and eager to learn, they can do so with the comfort of knowing that their fellow peers and administration respect them in every way possible. Almost done.
If you could, yep.
There are some problems, I'm sure, to all of our despondency that those sitting in this board meeting cannot change immediately. But the notion of respecting a person's pronouns without exception is not one of them. It is a non-issue. Students residing in the Pine-Richland School District should have the pronouns that match their gender identity and expression respected at all times, always. Sincerely, the board, staff, and volunteers at Sisters Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. That's it. Item 1.03. Oh. Sorry. Item 1.03, student and staff recognition.
Okay. First, we have Eden Hall students raised $16,000 for 4 charities. Our 6th graders were inspired by reading the book Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie. They each researched and presented a charity, and then the biomes voted on one each. So we had the desert biome raising money for the Mario Lemieux Foundation, forest raising money for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, grasslands raising money for the Wounded Warrior Project, and the aquatics biome raising money for the Alzheimer's Project. So next, Pine-Richland High School sophomore Elijah Christner earned 2nd place in the National Skills USA Championship with the A.W. Beatty chapter display team in Atlanta. The Skills USA advisor, Mrs. Heather Brown, noted that only 1% of all Skills USA students make it to nationals, so this was a great accomplishment. And lastly, Pine-Richland High School physical education and health teacher, Mr. John Connor, is retiring after 30 years of service. And we, on behalf of the district and board, we share our appreciation of Mr. Connor for dedicating his time and talent to serve the students of the district.
Thank you, and welcome to the school board. Item 1.04, correspondence. Ms. Williams.
The board received a letter from the State Tax Equalization Board regarding assessment. The information contained in the letter does not have much of an effect on our tax assessed values because Allegheny County reflects market value with periodic reassessments. Jennifer Buse emailed the board regarding independent volunteer board members and conflict of interest, DEI and Administrative Regulation 103. Chris Bono emailed the board regarding Policy 103, pronouns, and an incline article.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Item 1.05 is a motion to approve the meeting minutes as attached.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. Section 2, strategic plan update. Item 2.01 is a strategic planning process, mission, vision, and values update. And you want to chime in on it?
We discussed this at the last board meeting. Sean, if you could open up the PDF. And so again, this is the general process that we're proposing. This is similar to what we utilized 4 years ago. You can see on the left, it starts with the foundation of the existing plan, and what would we say also is an affirming of the mission, vision, values. I mean, the reality of our mission is that it is widely known and supported. It's also an aspiration. It is something that we have not yet achieved. You know, the challenge of our mission is every. And the reality of the work that we need to do within our schools and community is to continue to improve to meet the needs of every student that we have. So again, that's a foundation. The other foundation is a lot of data and information. And so what we have done in the past is we take all sorts of information about how we're doing and use that to help determine what are some of our advantages and what are the challenges that we face. An example tonight later is the stakeholder survey results. So we have now for many, many years given that survey out to students, to staff, to parents. We ask a whole bunch of questions about various areas of the district performance, and we open ourselves to the feedback. And that takes courage, and it has also provided us with great insight into how people are feeling about various aspects of academic programming, of student support services, of technology, of the culture and climate of schools. When we have the data over time, we're able to look at the trends. What is it telling us? And what are some areas of focus? We don't just look at the results from those surveys in the aggregate. So for example, if we were to look at elementary versus secondary students, we see different responses. So if the average is 80%, it might be 90 at K to 6, and it might be 70 at 7 through 12. That's information that's necessary for us to understand, and that's a part of the annual process that we utilize. So again, that's the foundation. What we're proposing, again, is a process that will run from almost middle August through late winter, early spring. And we'll include a series of town halls. You'll see on tonight's agenda we have joint governance meetings scheduled for the board. So conversations happen here, they happen in town halls. There's plenty of opportunity. Anybody who wants to have a voice in looking at what's facing Pine-Richland, what's facing public education, what are our strengths, what are our needs, and how do we identify next steps, can be a part of that process. So I'll sort of pause there. If there are any questions about process or focus. Last time, it's awesome. It's awesome to participate, to listen. We had almost 400 participants last time in one or, in some cases, all three of the town halls. And those who, I would just encourage anybody who's a part of our community, staff, students, et cetera, to be a part of that. And the more time someone's able to give, the more that they'll experience the whole process, and I think they'll find it even more rewarding to see how the work of the town halls and review of what we're doing leads eventually into strategy in the district. So it's a pretty awesome thing, and we're certainly excited to be a part of it. Yeah, the next item, is that good?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we
Okay.
just roll into item 2.01, strategic plan, key initiatives.
So again, we've done this annually for many, many years. We go through a cycle of retreats and workshops at the end of every school year to sort of look back, see what the strengths are, and also where we need to improve, and then get some consensus and clarity about the next year. This represents a list of the key initiatives, and we define something as key when it has broad impact across, the entire organization, large group of people and students. So I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but an example of the first one of a key initiative is to continue the in-depth program review process. These are the last 4 departments or programs to go through that. Once we work through that process, every department or program at Pine-Richland, which has just been, it's been incredible. Not only to have the staff engagement, but to have opportunities and focus groups for parents and students, and really to use that as a way to improve what we're doing for in our schools and with our students and families. So again, this outlines, we'll spend a lot more time in the days and weeks and months to come, but this is the game plan for key initiatives for 22-23.
Any discussion?
That's for both of those, right? I mean, discussion 1 or 2, right?
Yes.
I do have just a fine point on 2.02. Specifically, the third sub-bullet under bullet number 4, refine, implement, and communicate a systematic approach to safety, security, and culture. So, in addition to a broad effort to strengthen a positive culture, I think also some thought should be given to individualized efforts at the student level, at the individual student level. I know I kind of see this tucking into the MTSS model, right? Over and above our legal responsibility of an IEP, just what can we do on an individualized basis for the student where their learning is actually affected, and so supporting them in a way that is specific to just them. And it could mean not just learning support to help them learn, but it could also mean alleviating a parent's concern that they might not be, a teacher might not be seeing that they're good for a certain honors course, an AP course, right? So they get access to that course. So just, I think that should be part of that bullet.
Any further discussions?
I don't know what that looks like, Mark. I'm more confused. To be honest, it's not something not sure where you're going.
Well, I think where I'm going is that if there is a situation where a kid is coming to school and they're genuinely having trouble learning because of their environment, over and above whatever else we might normally look for in a kid, right? So let's support that kid on an individual basis to help them. And that's where I'm going with that. If over and above what we're legally responsible to do, what can we do? We already have a framework for supporting kids. So let's tap into that framework and do more than what we're legally asked to do.
So doesn't that mean actually addressing the school culture, though?
Well, sure, yeah. That's why I said broad, so broad efforts as well as individual efforts.
We did have a discussion at the workshop prior to this at our table, and so we had a chance to kind of dig into this a little further. And so what we were hearing was if we see a student evidencing a need, typical special education law would say, if there's a discrepancy or something that we need to address. What we were saying was we actually do go above and beyond that, and we meet students' needs. So whether it's a SAP referral or an MTSS need, they refer to a friendship group with the counselor. So there are a lot of interventions that take place that might be outside of that as well. And so that was something that we were clarifying at our table. I don't know if that speaks to what you were getting at, but we, if we see a student need, we do address that. It doesn't have to be a formal IEP that's saying that we need to do it, right? So those are things we discussed.
Yeah, we talked about all of the supports and processes we have in place to enable the district to provide student need in real time instead of having to wait for legal processes to take place, which can sometimes delay the supports and processes that students require. And the fact that we do have very many of those supports and processes in place currently.
And I would even say, if you think about it, it's that multifaceted dimensional triangle, right? So we're supporting kids through the MTSS process, all students through the MTSS process, through our student assistance team, as well as students that might have more intensive needs through the IEP, right? So all students are being supported. Even our gifted learners, if we're really helping them in terms of supporting them with their learning and acceleration, we're also supporting their emotional needs as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I guess I'll give another version of that. So there's two questions. One example is a student question that says, I'm proud to be a part of Pine-Richland. So that's a survey question. Another one says, I enjoy going to school to learn. So those are two questions that aren't at 100%. And those are the kind of questions that don't have a simple one type of action, right? Why do students feel proud? They feel proud or they enjoy going to school to learn when they have the opportunity to have relationships with teachers and staff. coaches and sponsors. They're dialed in or connected to student groups or activities or sports or something engages them, marching band with a peer group. Or they feel connected to their classmates and welcome and a part of that. So the answer, somebody feeling proud or feeling good about going to school to learn, the answer is going to be different for different students. And the challenge that we face is understanding that, asking those questions, and looking at what we do and how we do it to try to improve. And again, a game plan at the high school is going to look different than the middle school, than perhaps one of our elementary schools. But that's the concept behind that is, again, embracing differences among students and people and providing a place where students are proud and to be a part of and excited to come to school to learn. That is the challenge, and that is what we're trying to pursue.
So it sounds like a lot of this is captured and will be captured as the full development happens, yeah. Okay. Any further discussion?
Just the last comment. Because these are key, we will continue to at least update quarterly. So at the very least, the board and community will receive updates every quarter about what's happening. And again, I would anticipate with that example, we're going to see different things at different building levels because there are different areas of focus. And so we'll be able to talk about that, share that. We also briefly talked about asking those two or maybe a handful of questions from the annual survey more at a different cadence, so maybe every 9 weeks, so that we can get more sort of in-school process feedback on those areas of focus and see how we're doing, and then use that information, to further improve.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Kashani.
Yes, sir. Item 3.01 is motion to approve the financial reports dated May 31st, 2022, and to approve the accounts payable dated July 11th, 2022, in the amount of $341,688.19, and paid accounts for June, July in the amount of $1,026,454.95 as listed.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 3.02 is a motion to approve the proposal from PFM Financial Advisors for the annual use of the long-range budget model at a cost of $6,000 per year.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 3.03, motion to approve a cash in transit agreement with Brinks U.S. for bank courier service.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 3.04 is just information that we will not have any budget transfers until October when they're permitted. And 3.05 is an information that we'd like to schedule 2 finance governance meetings, one September 12th, one December 12th.
Could I just add a quick comment there? So the September 12th, that's a board meeting night. That's not our typical cycle for going through Mrs. Kirk's sort of budget finance planning. So we added that earlier, and that'll tie into a little bit of the discussion we might have on item 4.03. It definitely ties to one of the strategic challenges facing us and other schools, and that's the idea of continued focus on future-focused finance. We'll get more into it probably in 4.03, but the reason we added the 12th is because we have a lot of things happening, decision points in the next 1 to 4 months that precede a final decision on budgetary, things that might hit towards the end of the cycle, because they're not annual budget related items so much as they are an understanding of other capital expenditures, what's in front of us, what might that look like. So from a timing perspective, we added the 12th just to have another block of time we know is coming to be able to continue the discussion around that.
We looking at a typical 6 o'clock start time for those. Right. So everyone should have the regular meetings on their schedule already on those days. This would just be a 6 o'clock time. If there's major issues with a number of the board members, please let admin know and we can look at another date. But I think those will fly because we're already scheduled. Thank you, Mr. Kashani.
My pleasure.
Section 4, Buildings and Grounds. Item 4.01 is a motion to approve the purchase and installation of new rubber membrane roof sections at Richland Elementary by Pennsylvania Roofing Systems through CoStars at a total cost of $87,500.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 4.02 is just a information item for consideration at the August planning meeting. A motion to approve the resurfacing of the existing tile steps and treads of the stairwells at Richland Elementary by Santa Glaze of Pittsburgh through CoStars at a total cost of $19,425. Again, that will be brought forward as a motion at the August planning meeting. Item 4.03 is an information item about the main gym, green gym renovation, and we'll look for an update. Are we going to kick to Mr. Zimmerman, or who we kicking to?
He's on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Geronda and Mr. Zimmerman are out, but I'll take this.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
P.
you very much. So we do have a couple slides as just a reminder, too, because it's been a little bit since we've talked about this. But before we get into them, just a little bit of step back as to the why. So this came out of our athletic facility study that happened back in 2016, and looking across the district as opportunities for ongoing improvement, both short-term and long-term. There were those quick wins and major projects. This obviously falls under the major projects category. We've been doing work with Eccles for some time on this and looking at both of these structures, the main gym and the green gym, which is our auxiliary gym at the high school. But the main why with the main gym was to increase seating capacity. So currently we can seat around 600 plus, or that was our capacity in terms of student enrollment at the time. We want to increase that so we can allow the entire student body to participate in activities within gymnasium with a seating capacity of about 1,500 if we make these modifications. So the image you're looking at there is the recommendation to basically shift the gym, allowing for capacity and seating all the way around. A lot of flexibility in that space, not just for events that are athletic, but if we do a lot of different things within the gymnasiums in terms of assemblies with our entire student population. That's one example. We have an annual winter band concert that, elementary through high school come together, and right now we squeeze in that space. So enlarging this, increasing seating capacity, providing some more flexibility during our physical education classes where multiple classes can be doing multiple things is a huge benefit. But in order to make that shift that you see on the screen there, that would impact all of the storage that we have currently in our main gym area, and that then spills into what across the hall is our fitness center. So that fitness center then would have to be modified for storage, and so then that of course says, what are we going to do with a fitness center? So if you go to that slide right there, Sean, is good. This is another part of the main gym modification, and that's around some changes within the current locker room structure. Currently in the male and female locker rooms, they are traditional with the lockers. We've made some modifications like this in the past because now with the way students change and use the locker rooms, it's more for just storage of and for teaching. So more of an open concept you see in those images on the right-hand side of the screen, that you can do a lot of instruction in those spaces. There's still space for students to store valuable materials, but typically kids are bringing in backpacks and their own equipment now, and that opens the space up. So not as significant, but work to do in both of those locker rooms. And then across the hall, which is where our fitness center currently exists, becomes storage and conference room space with this modification. So the next aspect then, because of the loss of the fitness center, then that impacts what currently we call our green gym. So if you go to the next slide, scoot that up just a little bit more. The recommendation is to modify the green gym, so on one side it would be a 2-story facility. Bottom floor would be multi-purpose type mats, so we're talking about things like wrestling, cheerleading. ROTCs uses that space for different things. And on the second floor of that side would become our new fitness center. The other side of the green gym would remain with a high ceiling and open, so that brings flexibility for things like batting cages for softball and baseball. Still, volleyball can practice in there, basketball can practice in there, cheerleading if they're doing stunts and different things like that, they can use that space. So again, similar to when we talked about the ram cage, that we were looking for building spaces that are super flexible, that can integrate as many different groups into those spaces as possible. And that's the thinking that has gone into the green gym space. So back when we were studying this, we had input from coaches, teachers, extracurricular clubs, activities, to try to make sure that we were thinking about as many of those options as we could within those spaces. So then if you go to the next slide there for us, that gives you just a different visual image of what the green gym could look like. So one side's open with a lot of flexibility there. Other side is the mats and the wrestling type facility on the bottom floor. And then up top you have the fitness center. Again, nice thing about there for physical education, you could have a group working up in the fitness center. The teacher can monitor from above down below if there's some students doing some things there. And then of course for our after school activities, when things continue to expand with what is happening in our schools, that it gives us a lot of flexibility for the space. And it's not even limited to our athletic and high school activities, but we have a ton of youth groups that come in and use our spaces as well. So again, we feel like it provides just a lot of flexibility. So where we left off back in November of 2020 is basically where we were, but then because of all the challenges with workforce and cost of materials, we made the recommendation to postpone this work now to the summer of 2023. So in the bulleted items within the public comments, we have the timeline of moving this project forward. So between now and September, Mr. Duranda, Mr. Zimmerman, and others are working with Eccles to kind of fine-tune and make modifications to the proposal of both the main gym and the green gym. That then leads to the project will go out to bid in September of 2022, and then looking for a potential bid opening in October of 2022. Again, we're trying to get ahead of other projects from other schools, and the reason we need to do that is ordering materials, getting materials on site, so that the day that we can get in there, and this is to get the project started and completed in a timeline that is like May of 2023 through August, September of 2023. Aggressive timeline, according to the teams that we've talked to, it's doable, provided we have the materials and resources available on hand to get right at it. We know there's a lot of other projects that are coming forward that we've been talking about with the board. HVAC, obviously, those are huge things that are coming as well. But again, this was one of those major projects. We see a significant impact and opportunity for us to enhance our facilities, not just for athletics, but for others. Wanted to bring this forward as kind of the timeline that we have proposed, a little bit of that update on those visuals, and then it open up for any comments or questions.
So I was just going to interject super quick too. As we just talked about the September 12th finance meeting, these large projects will be a huge focus of that committee meeting, basically. So as you can see from the timeline, we're looking for that bid timeline of this project. And Mr. Zimmerman has also confirmed that he's working with Tower Engineering on the middle school HVAC project, also behind the scenes as of right now. They do believe that they will be on pace to do both of these bids around the same time. So we will be able to kind of dig into these projects a little bit more at that joint governance meeting. And then also be able to really talk about, again, that's going to be extremely preliminary. There's going to be a ton of estimates when we're talking about budget, but just thinking through what those different levers are to be able to approve and move forward with these, whether it be HVAC, the Green Gym project, or both, and what that's going to look like in terms of our budgeting process. Obviously, what is extremely helpful is when we look at this timeline, knowing that those bid prices are going to come in the fall and in the winter, then we would have certainty as to at least the cost. So just to kind of throw that in there in terms of timing.
Can you just update as well how we've saved towards some of the cost of Main Gym Green?
Yes, absolutely. So for this project, not for the middle school HVAC project, because we have not necessarily set funds aside for that. The current capital funding plan shows the bulk of that in the next year. But for this project, we have actually set aside 3 years worth of funding, which brings us to that estimated amount that's in the narrative of right around $4 million. So that has already been set aside. Again, that took 3 fiscal years to do that, but that's where we are currently for that.
There's more, obviously, background if we want it, but I don't want to revisit it unless there's a desire to do so. I mean, the concept of this has been 6 years in the sort of view, and as Dana said, we've taken the rare approach in a couple of projects of saving before we spend, which is not always the behavior that happens in organizations. So I guess I'll start with any additional background questions on how did we get to this place and what is the value for students and programming that we have?
I have questions, but not on background.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as well.
So, I think it may be where you're going, I'm not sure, but, the big question is, again, what does this mean from a future-focused financial perspective? And, again, publicly, we don't always talk at this level of financial planning, but one of the things that we know with great confidence is that the district is in a strong financial position, and that's due to many, many decisions in many, many areas over the years. So first, on the expenditure side, we know that we are incredibly efficient with how we operate, and so that begins with being disciplined and appropriate in staffing levels, since that's 67% of our budget. We know that in debt management, through the action of the board and third-party experts and Mrs. Kirk, we've seen debt as a percentage of budget drop from 14%, 8-9 years ago to 8.5% in the current year. We've seen fund balance increase from 12 million at that time to near 32 million. We've invested significantly in other infrastructure-related things in the district, everything from completely rebuilding the technology, wired and wireless infrastructure, to curriculum investments, and it goes on and on. And so when we talk about something that's athletic focused, it is important that we keep a much broader view of the use of the space, but also the investments that we've made in all of the areas. We continue to expand programs. It's very rare that we sit here and talk about curtailing a program or stopping something. We've been blessed to be able to continue to offer things which meet student needs. Things that don't continue usually don't continue because their interest level has waned or something, but not for any other reason. In 2017-18, that's the only time since I've been here that the board supported, that we recommended, and that we had a modest tax increase. That was a 1.97% increase, and a lot of work was done prior to 17-18 for there to be support of that increase. That was not a simple thing. The rationale simply at that time was to knowing what was coming and trying to have some goals related to debt was being able to enhance revenue that could specifically be targeted for capital funding. And that's been effective. So we've had the ability to do between $2 and $3.5 million worth of capital projects every year, and we've been able to address almost all of those expenses through the operating budget, not through any other means. And even in cases where the board approved some utilization of fund balance, ultimately at the end of the fiscal year, we've been in a position where that's not needed to be the case. But in the capital funding plan, which we know is a 10-year plan, and that has been built on third-party input like Tower for HVAC or Florida International for roofs, we have what we anticipate to be $34 million worth of roof and HVAC projects in the somewhat near term. And so that's the challenge, is understanding that and understanding where we are and how the projects and activities support student programming, and balancing all those competing interests that can exist within a school district. The one thing we can say with confidence is that on the expenditure side, that we are operating in a very efficient manner, and we have all sorts of metrics to understand that. This is a kind of a question, though, and so that's where we want to talk about that and get some input from the board even right now, but then continuing, because we're at that place. And so at the end of the day, we know there are only 3 primary levers to think about to do certain projects. One being a millage increase, one being utilization of fund balance, another being issuing debt, new debt of some form. So that's sort of where we are, sort of as a dialogue, and I'll kick it open to the board.
Well,
Greg, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
So my concern is the 30% increase from the original cost estimate. Is that something that we're going to get into more detail in the September meeting? And how will that difference be?
Yeah,
Where's that coming
so I
from?
would say a couple of things. When VEBH did and Mr. DiTullio was a part of that core group that was connected to the 2016 athletic study. The dollars included in the initial study were current day dollars in 2016. So it was more around identifying the scope of services, considering what those are, and prioritizing those. One of the biggest question marks in 2016 was, and we gave the board and administrative team together, sort of identified we need to make a decision within a few years. And the decision was, should we consider a standalone structure or the project that you see here for Main Gym, Green Gym? And so after a couple years, the idea of a standalone structure was just not, it was cost prohibitive. It would have been somewhere, in today's dollars, probably closer to 18 million. But at the time, 10 to 12 million or something was estimated. So the part of the increase, what you see here and what we've been saving towards, was the sort of the present day dollars. I think the variable that's different now is the variable of materials, labor, everything connected to supply chain and current. So it's, the number is probably somewhere closer to 5.2 to 5.9. That would be a more accurate estimate. So that's very different than where it was in 2016, but 2016 was then present day dollars.
So that worries me. That's probably low. Every project we have budgeted for is low right now. The other lever,
the 5.2 to 5.9.
Yeah, that's going to be low too. I mean, we're using 30% now as an educated guess, right? We have no idea.
Well, go ahead, Dana.
So our last 2 projects that did go out to bid, you'll remember that they did come in about 30% higher. And so that's actually what Eccles is seeing, and that's what they're telling us is kind of the norm at this point. It would be nice, obviously, to think that inflationary factor will decrease, but we're not sure. So in looking at, the ballpark 4 million, which really, as we have gone through all of the designs and all of the project plans and everything right up until the pandemic, that was our target. That's where we were headed. They are well aware of the funds that we have set aside, so they know kind of what that parameter is. But we know also from those most recent bids that they have been coming in higher. So again, it is a
Well,
concern, but then that could easily get us to the 5.2.
And I don't want to get off on that track. We don't have to debate 30, 40, 50. I guess my concern, the other lever we have, is that we don't do every project. And this is feeling more and more like a project we don't do. We need roofs, we need HVAC. If every project, so we've saved enough for this project, well, based on our budget, but we haven't saved enough based on what the actual cost is going to be. We haven't saved enough for the other projects.
Right.
So it's just, we can get it more into it on the 12th, but where my head is right now is questioning doing this project. Right now.
It's so, look at the gym. If you haven't been in the gym, go to the gym. And you're reminded that despite what we see here, or if you're in the new addition, that's a 30-year-old gym. It's fully depreciated. There aren't many structures in our own homes or in public space that go 30 years without a major update. It was a very thoughtful process that led to this suggestion. And this is not, we beat this up multiple iterations, right, to refine it and come up with this. So I'm supportive. But I want to be clear. And I've heard just informal talk about, I think there was something that was said in this year's budget process that may not have sunk in. We raised taxes in 2017, right? And that was, once in now 8 or 9 year span almost. That's not sustainable. It's not. It's probably not sustainable even if we don't do anything with the gym. It's simply not sustainable because we have a fixed real estate assessment. Your house can double in value, your revenue to the school district stays the same. Just odd, but that's the way it is. There is no adjustment whatsoever in our real estate revenue for inflation. Unlike a township or a state with income tax, income goes up, sales taxes go up when prices go up, right? Those things go up. We don't have that lever. So it was conveyed very clearly, and I think we all know who've lived through that. You have to raise taxes every once in a while. If there's no willingness to do that, then start here. I don't want to authorize redoing the gym and then find ourselves in a year or two cutting programs because there's not a willingness to make a small millage increase. Small, right? And there's no exact number. I don't know. I don't know what the right number is. It's probably not zero in the long run. I know that, so I don't get anchored in that. So I think we have to, move forward and look at these projects, but know that we're going to be faced, with this in the next few years, probably this year, but we don't know for sure. There's too many unknowns.
Well, that's right, Peter. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I'm also saying in different words the same thing. At the moment, I feel like we need more data. We need to get into more depth, but the way things are trending, there is more of a cause for doubt and concern over price increases that are just going to maybe make this not doable. So I want to continue to talk about it. I'm not decided either way, but this is you wanted to know our thinking. This is the first time I thought, well, maybe this is not the time to do this.
The couple other pieces that I think are important just from we have done multiple demographic studies to understand to the best degree possible what's happening in our community and what's happening in terms of student enrollment. The good news out of those studies, an updated study, is that we have the capacity in our 6 schools for the far foreseeable future. So we have capacity, which allows us to have a conversation around the renovation through our capital funding plan of the spaces. And we see that all the time. So this is definitely the big number. Each of the roofs will be a big number. Each of the HVAC are going to be a big number. And those are numbers that are non-discretionary. I think we would probably agree. Like that stuff's happening. The cost, the risk of not doing that work is really not even a conversation. And so this type of thing, which is here at this time and has been postponed, is something that comes up. But again, for our community to know, the projection for enrollment continues to be pretty flat. When they think about Pine-Richland, and because of the continued new townhome building growth, you look at the district and you would think student enrollment is increasing. And it has not been increasing for well over a decade. And what we learned through the demographic study is the rationale for that is the huge boom in residential growth in the 90s and early 2000s. As students were in those homes, and those students graduated and moved on, we have a population of homes filled with empty nesters who are now in the district and with a home, but no longer have school-age children. So the continued growth, particularly in the last 10, 15 years in Pine Township, that's where we've had like 100 to 125 homes built on average every year for a long period of time. Those homes are bringing with them children. Those children are what's maintaining our level student enrollment and backfilling, if you will, the empty nesters. The only part that's coming with that is we've seen that density shift, if you will, of students from east to west. And so that was a part of the redistricting decision. It's not that we had more students, but we're seeing the gradual shift of students from east to west. So Hants and to some degree Richland was seeing declining enrollment while Wexford was using all available spaces, and so that's what led to that. But again, I offer that up because that's a huge thing, because if student enrollment is increasing, then that means corresponding to student enrollment is staff need, and we have some degree of confidence that we're not going to see significant shifts there.
And that favorable dynamic is also what's enabled us to only increase it 1.9% over 9 years, right, Peter? So, that's right. I mean, it's nothing we did; it just happened. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, there are things
because
we
we've done a lot
didn't
of
control that dynamic.
We didn't,
Yeah. Right.
but everything that we could control,
we did.
We did.
Don't
Yeah.
be
So I know.
defensive.
I'm not.
Don't be defensive.
I'm being defensive of this entire body because we've had a whole lot of things happening for a long time.
It's a multivariable, nonlinear equation.
I think one of the things is we've gotten pretty used to, we made the one small increase of 1.97%. We've done a lot of savings. We've also had some things break in our favor, i.e. the hailstorm, right? That broke in our favor. Doesn't seem like it, but it did, and allowed us to save on those projects so that we can put them towards others. This is the first time that as a group, at least since I've been here, we're facing things that are actually trending the other way on us, right? So I think we just need to be mindful and open of all the options in front of us and not shut any of them down. We do need more data, but just saying, yes, we're gonna do it right now or no, we're not. If it came in at 4.1 million or whatever, it's a no-brainer, but
right.
It's at least in my mind, we just have to keep everything because, again, if I want to renovate my kitchen at home because it's old and dated, but I can still use it, but my heating and air conditioning goes down, I'm spending the money on my heating and air conditioning. That's just, so we just, again, everyone has to make their own minds up, but we've got to just keep open on what those options will be presented.
Yeah,
I think when it really comes down to it, it's going to come down to the actual authorization to bid. So keep in mind that the board has to approve a motion to authorize the project to go out to bid. So there's that. And then once it's out for bid and then you receive the bid prices in, depending upon how the bids are structured. And again, I'm not necessarily aware of like number of alternates and those types of things, but typically when the bids go out, you're able to have some flexibility as to what level of that project that you're going to approve. And again, that could be pieces even with HVAC, as we had talked about. For some of the board members that have been on the board a while, some of the older HVAC reports that we've had for the middle school and for Richland gave different options and what those look like. And so we may be able to see some of that whenever we put that out to bid. Once those bid prices come in, then the evaluation is done to try and figure out what does that look like versus the budget. Well, and unfortunately, again, that's going to be the budget as of June 30th that we just approved, because we're not really going to even have that much data by that timeline. So just keep in mind that there's multiple approvals that would go on. One would be the authorization to bid both projects, and again, it would be the green gym and the middle school HVAC, and then to actually review and assess what those prices would be once they come in.
Yeah, I would add to Dana's comment. So if there's a need for data or information on either the expenditure side generally, revenue side generally, or on a specific project, please let us know. You know, this particular project has been, I don't know if John Pappas used Mark Scheller, value engineered, but it's been value engineered as efficiently as it can be in order to still accomplish the same outcome. So there is not value engineering to be gained through additional look at the main gym, green gym. So if there's specific data, we would just want to understand, you know, what it is that you're looking for, so we can get the right people here and be able to speak to it. One of the things that we know back from when the projects were considered, as Dr. Pasquinelli talked about, is the athletic study was not an attempt to, and field use, to put all sorts of stuff in there, right? It was not that at all. It was rigorous from the beginning in order to not set an expectation that was unreasonable. So when the prioritization of projects, beginning with the biggest one, which was the visitor and team locker room and putting an athletic trainer on field level, that was one of the first big projects that occurred. Obviously, the ram cage is another one, and one of the reasons for the prioritization of the ram cage was it's used by tons. I mean, it's from physical education classes to music programs to it's just from sun up to sundown. It is a resource that's used by the community. The benefit of this particular project, and I'm not trying to persuade, I just want to share why it came forward when it came forward, is because it touches before school, during school, and after school with so many different groups. And part of the way we meet the needs of our kids and community is through the activities and things that we offer. And so we definitely get the price tag. You know, we do not, I certainly do not, and Mrs. Kirk does not. We don't ever bring forward recommendations without thought to the implications of them on the system. We would never do that. I get that this is a tough one, and it's tough in light of the other things we know are coming. And so I'm not sure that there's one right answer. We're happy to provide whatever other information is desired, but I honestly see a time coming where it's just tough. It's just a tough decision to make, and there's going to be pros and cons on both sides of considering that, and but it is not going to get easier. So this type of project is not going to be more attractive 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. This is, I think, my professional assessment would be this is where we sort of are with this project, because the other things are significant and they're going to be coming fast.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, item 4.04 is a summer projects update, and is that Dana, Dr. P, who's taking that one?
Dana would be my vote.
I'm not going to go over it in great detail just because this is definitely Mr. Zimmerman's document. But just to let you know, the projects that we currently have that are on pace, any of the ones that are currently in progress, we can happily say that, like, for example, the first one that shows up under Wexford Elementary in progress would be the library improvements and then the LED lighting. So those projects are moving right along. The demo is happening in there. I believe the painting was supposed to be occurring today, and carpet later on, either this week or next week. We are also in the process of the Richland Elementary library project as well. And as you may remember, also we are headed down the path of the restroom renovations over there as well. In terms of some of the projects that are going on at Eden Hall, a lot of those are still in the planning stage. Same with the middle school and high school. We do have some classroom upgrades, which are currently in process here at the high school, and doing some painting and some improvements there as well. So if anyone happens to have any questions on any of the specific projects, please feel free to reach out to me or Mr. Zimmerman, and again, I can always touch base with Mr. Rucker. But it's really exciting to think about the volume of projects that we currently have going on, and we are on pace to get them approved and done and finished before the kids come back.
So no surprises as of yet, which is good.
No surprises currently, knock on Formica, but yeah, as of right now, we're good.
Thank you.
This is just an incentive to get out before it's dark. But if you drive by the tennis courts, they have finished painting, and that was one of our projects that we have done over the course of time. They look awesome, and that's just to get us out of here before it's dark.
So we have like 10 minutes, right? Okay. All right. So we'll move to academic achievement. Dr. Meyer, and according to Dr. Pasquinelli, talk fast. No. Okay.
Item 5.01 is a motion to approve the special education plan for the 2022 through 2025 school years as attached.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Just would like to thank the teachers, administrators, and parent that assisted with the completion of the plan.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the efforts. Fantastic, and really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Student Services, Mrs. Hillman.
Item 6.01, the PR Aquatics Pool Rental Agreement. A motion to approve the attached pool use and rental agreement for Pine-Richland Aquatics as attached.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 6.02 is a motion to approve the attached agreement with Presley Ridge for services to provide an extended school year program for the period of June 22nd, 2022 through July 27th, 2022.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 6.03 is a motion to approve the Pennsylvania School-Based Access Program Local Education Agency Agreement to participate for the 2022-23 fiscal year.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 6.04 is a motion to approve the 2022-2023 Watson Institute Service Agreement as attached.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 6.05 is an information item. The school-based mental health agreement with Glade Run Lutheran Services was board approved at the June 20th, 2022 regular meeting, subject to attorney review and approval. GRB has given its approval for the final agreement, which is attached for board's awareness.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Dr. Paxan and your team and pulling that together. And I know we've already approved it, but it's good that this is going on the books now. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hillman. Staff Services, Mr. Cassidy.
7.01 is a motion to approve the Assistant Superintendent 2021-2022 performance ratings as listed in the Superintendent's 2020-21-2022 performances ratings as listed.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
7.02 is a motion to approve the PREA, PRESPA personnel and athletic, non-athletic supplements as attached.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, vote. I don't listen. What do we say? All those in favor?
Yes.
What do we say? I don't know.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll get it right. Any opposed? Sorry. Motion passes.
7.03 is a motion to approve the attendance and applications of Dr. Brian Miller and Dr. Kristen Justice to present at the Partnership for Excellence Quest for Success Conference at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio on September 13th, 2022, as described on attached forms.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes.
7.04 is a motion to approve the third and final reading of Policy 119, Current Events as attached.
Second.
Discussion, any discussion?
I appreciate the time and effort that was put into it. I think the final product was really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I appreciate the discussion that you started last time. I think that was the best example of a positive discussion that we've had coming off of something and worked with everyone in the board and administration, so thank you. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes.
That was a good job, Amy. I think it was completely planned by Greg.
It was.
But
I know.
mid-motion.
He told me he
yeah.
was going to like put me in charge one time, but I didn't know.
Yeah,
It'd be, like,
usually
on
you
the
get a
fly
little
when we
heads
had
up. Mid-motion was a nice touch, though.
Yeah,
that was good.
I cannot remember an in-motion handoff.
No,
that was
that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
You know, sometimes, just there's sometimes. So it's one of the disadvantages of getting older, like not being able to see anymore. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Cassidy.
7.05 is a motion to approve in accordance with Policy 109.1, Library Resources, the weeding of Eden Hall Upper Elementary School Library Resources as attached.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy, and thank you, Mrs. Turchik. Operational Services, Mrs. Bursalis.
Okay. Item 8.01 is an information item. Under the ESSER requirements, we must still review or update our health and safety plan every 6 months up through September 30th, 2024. So I don't know if you want to take over from here.
Sure. So that's really why this is here. What's attached reflects how we finished the last school year. As we finished the last school year, we were still providing weekly data to the Allegheny County Health Department. We've not received any notice that will change, and so as we prepare for the fall, this reflects where we finished the last school year. So we don't need to submit it to PDE anymore. We do need to post it to the website. We do need to have it here as information. It doesn't require action. If the board were to want to do that, you could, but we don't need to do that. Our understanding is having it documented on the agenda and then posted on the website meets the ESSER requirements.
Any other discussion? Item 8.02 is an information item. On an annual basis, the Pine-Richland School District conducts a detailed survey for parents of all grades, staff, all workforce groups, and students, grades 3, 6, 8, and 12. I'm going to hand this one over again.
And we've talked about this in various ways tonight, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. There are strengths in here, and there are opportunities for improvement. Some of the strengths and opportunities for improvement look differently when we look through the lens of a particular building or workforce group or level of parents. And so at all of our schools, this is the work continues to look at the results in order to help identify what we're doing well and where we need to improve. One of the examples just to tie back to our 4.03 discussion is around budget. If we look at how the budget's an example of something that can become it's a quiet thing, often in years when there's no millage increase. And I'm not just talking about Pine-Richland, it's true across public education. And we see from the results that one of our lowest responses of any item is whether people are do they pay much attention to how they feel? And they basically don't pay much attention and feel okay, and we know that there's good things, that have been happening financially. We also know, just as an example, that in the last, since 2012, we've gone in terms of millage rate from halfway in Allegheny County. So there are 42 school districts in Allegheny County. We were like right in the middle in terms of our millage rate. We're now 7th of 42, 7th lowest millage rate in Allegheny County that has occurred over the last. So these are good things. But long story short, we're posting these for transparency and awareness. A lot of work has been done and will continue to be done to identify the building-based goals to try to improve. The two areas I mentioned, particularly with students, proud to be a part of Pine-Richland, and you're excited to get up and come to school to learn. Those are two questions in particular that we're focused in on because they will help inform how we improve.
I want to note and thank you guys that that's a good connection to the stakeholder key initiatives of building that environment and making sure kids feel safe and supported. So I think that's a good bridge to keep moving.
I just accidentally closed out when I went back.
That's right. We're gonna take the next one.
So I'll just read. I'll read 8.03 just as an information item on the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium audit results.
Okay.
Dr. Pasquinelli.
Yeah, thank you. So we've been talking about this audit for quite some time. This is some of the work that came out of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion key strategic initiative that we've been providing updates over the course of this past school year. So just as a quick reminder, internal audit, third-party internal audit, was conducted in May. There was about 39 staff members, a few school board members participated as well, and we had 3 different breakout groups. The concept there was to discuss each of the questions in the audit, again, thinking through those different workforce group lenses, and then coming to a consensus and then putting in a response. In addition, as part of the audit was a teacher survey. So a voluntary teacher survey was offered to our entire teaching staff, and we were fortunate to have 293 of our teachers participate. When they took that, they were thinking through their own personal lens. So all teachers had an opportunity to complete that, and now the results are posted. So again, just like the stakeholder survey, it's available for board and community to review as those results came in. We just lifted a couple of examples of opportunities that we think could lead to some action. And the reason we say that, if you recall when we talked about this in the first place, it's a data point. And we stressed that one data point doesn't drive action. But a data point on top of other data points that are consistent then lead to, hey, we've got something there that should drive us in a certain direction. So one of the opportunity findings that came out of the audit for both the internal audit and the teachers was around opportunities for diverse perspectives related to things that are happening, current events. So where do we see current events coming up in different places? Obviously, our policy review that we just talked about tonight. You heard about current events, recommendations coming out of the social studies in-depth program review. You heard about current events coming out of the ELA program review. So all of those on top of this say that we have some opportunity there to support our staff in order to support our students to further engage in events as they happen that are challenging topics sometimes to engage with. Again, we have to think about the developmental level of our children and all those things that go with it. But that's one example that's in the audit that aligns with some things that we've already been talking about. Another example is improving school classroom climates for all students. So what does that look like? You've heard a lot about the Rams Way. So the Rams Way is intentionally teaching students best practices, behaviors, expectations, and then reinforcing positive behaviors. So using inappropriate slang or language directed at other people because they're different is an opportunity that we see through the audit and at different times that have come up. So we see potential action there linking to the Rams Way with more intentional instruction for supporting expectations for how we treat others in our schools. That's another example. Another example was engaging stakeholders, again, with different perspectives in gathering information about school culture for all students. We feel like we have something in place right now with our council. We called it in the past Diversity, Equity, Educational Equity Inclusion Council. We believe that there's an opportunity through the feedback that we've received with these audits and others is to engage a more diverse perspective within that council. So continue the council, but perhaps rebrand it a little bit, invite some additional perspectives to come in, and we talk about how do we continue to improve the climate and culture of all of our schools. So even, the name of the council, we've talked about things like School Culture and Student Engagement Council, perhaps as an idea to further encourage other people to participate. We still want student voice, so we always have turnover with students graduating. Last year we introduced alum to our council. We want to continue to do things like that to get different voices, different perspectives to help us grow and develop as a school community. So that came out of the audit, and it's reinforced with a lot of the things we've been talking about here in this room and through those council meetings. And then the last, as Dr. Miller referenced, is there's feedback from the audit around increasing opportunity for diverse student voice. So pockets of students are always integrated into all our decision making. You hear that with our in-depth program review. You hear that when we have our town hall meetings. You'll hear it when we do our strategic plan. Students are engaged. We have leadership groups, and when we build those leadership groups, we're always asking from kids from different backgrounds, experiences, expectations for what they want to do post-high school, and listening to them. But we feel like we can expand those student groups out even further. So that's getting into additional, perhaps, survey opportunities for all kids. Like right now, our stakeholder surveys are for grades 3, 6, 8, and 12. We could expand that further, get more student voice over the course of the year, and have some different benchmarking times where we ask those two questions that Brian alluded to, proud to be PR and engaging in student learning, excited about coming and learning at PR each day. And then based upon what we hear kids say, we bring it back to the discussions, the council, and whatnot. So those are just 4 examples of findings that were lifted out of the audit that are overlapping with other things that we're hearing, seeing through all of our other studies, that we just want to lift that as an example, and there's all the information for all the different findings are in those 2 documents that are attached.
Any additional discussion?
Item 8.04. Item 8.04 is for information. We'll be having joint governance meetings on the topic of the strategic plan on August 8th at 6 p.m. and October 3rd at 6 p.m.
Those invites haven't been sent out yet, though, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. You don't have to do it that quick. I was just looking at my calendar. It didn't pop up. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Bersalis. Board business. Just an information item that the board will have a special board meeting on, it's scheduled for July 14th, 2022 at 12 p.m. for the purpose of hiring 2 assistant principals. The meeting will be fully virtual. The meeting will also be made available to the community through live stream. Again, this is one action item only that we will be reviewing, and that will be the approval of the assistant principal candidates. Item 9.02 is another information item for public awareness. As mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the board and the board had an SLT board leadership workshop prior to this meeting at 5 p.m. The purpose of the workshop was to reflect on organizational performance in 2021-2022 school year and clarify strategic priorities for 2022-2023, and to look forward as to how we can do that in the most positive light possible. Would you like to, so me personally and any other board member can jump in, I thought it was a positive event. We get to have these events a couple times a year. It's appreciative of everyone because we all got to be here at 5 o'clock. Those of us coming in from external, and then also on these days, the SLT gets 0 break. They're here all day, and then they roll right into these meetings. So much appreciated by everybody. But again, I think a positive outcome of the meeting. We had some really good roundtable discussions. There was a lot of jovial laughing, and I think folks enjoyed that kind of setting, and I think it really helped a positive light. So any other discussion points or comments? All right. Section 10, 10.01, reports. I know we have one board report from Mrs. Turchek on Pine Township Community Report. Does anyone else have any other reports for today? No. Ms. Turchik.
So Pine Park, we haven't met as a board in a month or two because of conflicts, but a lot of emails flying around about an event that Pine Park's going to put on, I think, with some community groups, some booster groups. It's going to be a community-wide spirit event, I think, during the week of homecoming. Details are a little sketchy. We're meeting tomorrow, so I'll have more info and find out some more there, but it's going to involve everybody in the community, not just high school kids, younger kids, youth sports, scouts, everything. They're wanting to have it during the week of homecoming, maybe the band, just like a whole, I think they're calling it a Ram fan community event. So that's more details to follow, but we have our meeting tomorrow, so we'll see what comes of that. So should be fun.
Thank you. And if there's no other reports, item 10.02 is recognition of visitors. Ms. Williams.
We have one person signed in, Mike Barber.
Hello, Mike Barber. I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to kind of look back at this past year. It was very difficult for a lot of people, my family as well. And so I just wanted to say, Dr. Miller, thank you so much. I don't necessarily agree with everything that you do, most namely how young lady Miss Baxter was handled last summer at the summer board meeting. But this past year, I can't say enough of, voice enough appreciation for the effort that I witnessed you put in the board meetings and then helping my family out. So I just wanted to extend a lot of appreciation your way, Dr. Justice, Dr. P. And then my children's teachers, Miss Hoffman, you definitely deserve a raise. Kindergarten teacher, I was her homeroom parent, and man, she deserves a raise. So if you guys can work that in there, hook her up. And Miss Spence, I wasn't in your classroom as much, but I'm sure you deserve that raise as well, based off of some of the friends my son is bringing home. I also just wanted to, I volunteered for Hance's field day, and three people that I really wanted to highlight was Mr. Hugus, the gym teacher. Amazing event. All those kids loved it, so congrats to him. Miss Marlena Wolf, who former Hance PTO president, arranged a lot of the parent volunteers leading up to it. Crushed it. All the parents that volunteered were amazing. Jen Grabowski, I think I butchered her last name, but she helped organize the volunteers once they came, so big ups to her. And I feel like I'm missing somebody, but I just want to say thank you. I know that I've been on the microphone a lot, voiced a lot of disagreement, stand by every single word that I've mentioned here, but I appreciate and understand that I think everybody's got the children at the forefront of their minds. So I hope we keep moving and working towards our motto. I forget it, but Dr. Miller spouts it out every meeting, so I'm sure he can end the meeting with it. But I just want to say thank you to everybody that's involved, all right? Have a good night.
Thank you. Are there any online speakers, Ms. Williams?
No.
No.
That's it.
All right. And we will move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.